Would Amy please read the roll?
Mr. Amrine.
Here.
Mr. Kuhar.
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg.
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti.
Here.
Ms. Wallach.
Here.
Mr. Ferrera, Ms. Schaefer-Bitch, and Mike DeLeon, and Robin Turner has to be excused. I need a motion.
Move to excuse.
Second.
Second by Gwen. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, thank you. We have to make, we have to authorize the drafts below, so I need a motion for that.
So moved.
By Jack.
Second.
Second by Roger. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. So legislation, would the clerk read draft number 2022-010 in title only?
Draft number 2022-010, an ordinance authorizing a collective bargaining agreement between the City of Kent and the Dispatch Unit, Fraternal Order of Police, Ohio Labor Council for the period of November 1st, 2021 through October 31st, 2024, and declaring an emergency.
Move suspension.
Second.
Because we don't have enough to suspend the rules, the motion's going to be appropriate, pass it on the first reading. Am I right? Hope?
Yes.
All right.
Yes, you are. That's the
Okay,
appropriate motion.
move to approve.
Second.
Second.
Second by
Amy, read the roll for
Sidoti.
approval
Mr. Amrine.
on the first reading.
Mr. Amrine.
Yes.
Mr. Kuhar.
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg.
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti.
Yes.
And Ms. Wallach.
Yes.
Okay, the first reading has passed.
Okay, would the clerk please read draft number 2022-011 in title only?
Draft number 2022-011, an ordinance authorizing a collective bargaining agreement between the City of Kent and Police Officer Unit, Fraternal Order of Police, Ohio Labor Council for the period of November 1st, 2021 through October 31st, 2024, and declaring an emergency.
No first reading.
Second.
Second by Roger. Is there any discussion on this? Seeing none, please call the roll for discussion.
Mr.
Adoption.
Kuhar?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Ms. Wallach?
Yes.
Mr. Amrine?
Yes.
Okay, the first reading is passed.
Okay, thank you. Would the clerk read draft number 2022-012 in title only?
Draft number 2022-012, an ordinance authorizing a collective bargaining agreement between the City of Kent and the Civilian Employee Unit, Fraternal Order of Police, Ohio Labor Council for the period of November 1st, 2021 through October 31st, 2024, and declaring an emergency.
Move to first reading.
Second.
Second by Tracy. Is there any discussion on first reading?
Yeah.
Mr. Guar.
Can we even pass it on a first reading with this few of people?
I
No.
think so.
Yes.
Just
you-
the first reading.
Yeah, just the first reading.
You
All
just
you need
need-
is a simple majority.
Yeah, you need 7 to suspend the rules. We
Yeah.
can't do that. Please call the roll for adoption.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Ms. Wallach?
Yes.
Mr. Amrine?
Yes.
And Mr. Kuhar.
Yes.
Okay, the first reading is passed.
Okay, thank you. Would the clerk read draft number 2022-013 in title only?
Draft number 2022-013, an ordinance authorizing the city manager or his designee to enter into a settlement agreement between the City of Kent and Matthew Benson for a Bureau of Workers' Compensation claim and declaring an emergency.
Move first reading.
Second.
Second by Tracy. Is there any discussion on adopting it? Please call the roll for adoption.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Ms. Wallach?
Yes.
Mr. Amrine?
Yes.
Mr. Kuhar?
Yes.
And Ms. Rosenberg.
Yes.
Okay, the first reading has passed.
Okay, the business for the special council meeting is done. We're adjourned. We're going to move into committee meetings.
Can't do it yet.
Pardon?
Don't you have to wait till 7?
Yeah, I suppose we better.
Yep. We got 5 minutes.
I already said that.
Yeah. We have 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Why do I We're going to kind of change things around, so
I thought it was.
at first, I want to do Finance Committee, and Tracy will be chairing in the absence of Mike DeLeon. So, Tracy, you.
Okay, you have a budget appropriations request from Rhonda.
Rhonda?
Mhm.
Rhonda, the microphone isn't turned on yet. You hold the button
Back.
Back.
on the back.
Yeah, right.
You gotta hold it for, there you go.
No, it's on. I would like to request council approve the budget amendments that I submitted to the city manager in a memo dated January 25th, 2022, and then amended on January 31st, 2022. You'll see on the last page, we amended one of the line items for the reappropriation of some body cameras, so that way we can utilize some grant money that we can get. If anybody has any questions?
Questions from council? Nothing? Anybody in the audience have any questions? Back to council.
Move to approve an emergency.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Hit the road and go home, girl.
Thank you.
Beat
All right,
the
we'll
storm.
move back to the Committee of the Whole. We had an applicant for a board and commission. Amy, do you want to?
Yes. We have one applicant for the Fair Housing Board. It's a reappointment, and it's Reuven Cincinnatus. He's not able to attend this evening. I think if you'd seen my email, I had sent out, but he is the only applicant on tonight's agenda for approval.
All right, for the record, we'll vote on that in 2 weeks, so. Moving on, we were supposed to have a discussion on the race and diversity in the city of Kent, and Mr. Ruler has been working very hard about putting a program together, and because the missing seats at council tonight, we're going to postpone that to another date, so, but thank you for all your hard work up to now, Dave. Do you have anything you want to say on that?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Okay, that's it for Committee of the Whole. Community Development, Mr. Kuhar?
The annual economic development update, Tom? I thought that's why everybody stayed home.
That's what I thought too. First off, since we're such a small group, we decided not to use the monitors and just let you folks follow through with the presentation you have in your packet. Hopefully everybody brought it this evening.
It's in the yellow sheet.
John, do you have one?
Mine's sitting on the kitchen table.
Oh, here, John, you could have one.
Thank you, Dave.
Well, no, I need the next one, then I'll give it to you.
Okay, so this is the annual economic update. If you look at the agenda, it's very similar to prior years. Unfortunately, for the last 2 years, we've had to include the line item effect of the pandemic or something to do with the pandemic, and it's there. So we'll start out with the completion of last year's projects. The first one is Quench Juice Cafe down there on Erie Street, and that, the owner is Natasha Bostrakov. That's not her in the picture, but she has made herself very well known. She's oftentimes out in front of her store giving people samples and so forth. She's done a very nice job there. It's a very high quality product as well. And then the Barrio expansion, if you remember last year we were talking about how amazing it was that somebody would be doing an expansion in the middle of the pandemic, and Sean and Steve were very pleased they did it. It's one of their highest performing stores, and they have nothing but good things to say about their Kent location. They're very glad to be here, so that's worked out very well for them. Then the Kent, yes?
What did they expand into? The yogurt, where the yogurt shop?
Yeah, Yogurt Bee.
Can I ask another question? Tom, I'm just curious, so do we have any idea about Yogurt Bee going out and them taking over that space in terms of our income from the taxes? In other words, do we have an idea? Did we lose anything or did we gain anything?
My guess is we would have gained with the Barrio staff because they have a very large staff compared to what Yogurt Bee would have been very small. But the only person that sees individual businesses just left the room. And, would be Rhonda and her
Yeah.
staff. I don't see individual
Well,
businesses, so.
The only reason I ask is because I think that when we see storefronts that are open or then a storefront that is taken over, we automatically assume that expanded business is going to increase our tax.
I would guarantee you that Barrios is more than made up for the loss of Yogurt V.
Very good, thank you.
Of course, I'm guessing. And then Kent Mazda, you might recall that City Council approved a 12-year, 50% property tax exemption with the CRA agreement for their expansion and renovation. It's complete. Just got my oil change there yesterday. They did a wonderful job. You can see the pictures there. Just as a reminder, that was a $4.5 million investment in the expansion and renovation. They spent $1.5 million on the property, and then he would have loved to have spent another $3 million in inventory, but he can't get any cars.
Right.
So that didn't happen, but that wasn't part of the exemption anyway. So. Of course, we had our Mod Wash Auto Wash open up out there on State Route 59. Just so you know that there's actually 36 locations under that brand with 147 more under development, so you'll see a lot more of those. They are a city water user, so that was a nice customer to pick up, but they are not a JED participant. And then we have the Hasawi building that's changed quite a bit over the last few weeks. If you've been driving by it, you've seen all the scaffolding and support taken down, and now you can get a real sense of what the building is going to look like. He either just awarded or will award very soon the brick contract, and he's hoping to have all the walls with the brick up by the end of April and hoping to have the building open by the end of summer. I think that's very optimistic given supply chain and labor issues, but that's his plan right now.
Excuse me, another question. The south-facing side, that's going to also be brick?
That's going to be brick with some banding in it to give it a
Okay.
little bit of variation. But then, of course, the idea is there'll be another building on the other side of that
Right,
somewhere
that's-
down the road.
So it's not going to be attached?
No, there'll be about 15 feet separating them
Beautiful.
for fire issues.
Great, thank you.
And then what the biggest project we have in town, nobody ever sees it because it's hidden back, behind Davie headquarters back there, but is their expansion. You might recall that you approved a 10-year, 75% property tax exemption for this through an enterprise zone agreement. It's a $14 million investment. They did a wonderful job being well ahead of the curve in terms of ordering materials, so they're very much on track and actually ahead of schedule, and hope to be completed before the end of this year. And if you recall, they committed to creating 35 new jobs with an annual payroll of $1.8 million. Of course, they're actually going to have far more jobs than that, especially if you look at 10-year time horizon. So they're doing very well. Of course, the Singh Bharani Healthy Indian Cuisine restaurant opened up. I'm not personally a fan of Indian food, so I haven't tried it, but I've heard nothing but good things from people that have. So. Then it was Lightly Toasted that opened up on East Main Street. It's Cooper Dulick and Adam Lippy are the two partners. Of course, the father of Cooper is the one that purchased the building. We'll talk about medical marijuana dispensaries later. That's come up with them recently. But of course, right now they serve or sell vape products and glass statues, as you can see there. So that's glass artwork. Gwen actually volunteered to demonstrate one of them this evening, but I wouldn't let her. So.
Beautiful artwork.
And then, of course, one of our big successes, Bell Tower Brewing Company opened up, and they just did a wonderful job there. Ryan and Bridget, I can't say enough good things about how that place looks and how it's already becoming a destination for the city of Kent. Somebody was in there on Saturday, and Bridget said they had their best day ever so far. But then I guess they're saying that every week, so it's just the kind of thing, it's growing. Once this pandemic is over and they can use that patio, I think it's going to be an incredible success. So they've done a very nice job with that. La Casa del Taco, of course, took the place of Main Street Continental Grill. Mike Awad still owns the real estate, but Tyler Rickel owns the business, and he's the one who's operating it. He's out of the Pittsburgh area, and to my understanding, he's doing fine so far. it was kind of invisible. Jeff Crow, most of you may know Jeff Crow, who has Erie Street Kitchen, and of course he just had that little kitchen there in the back of Venice and was serving people on the sidewalk. Well, about halfway through last year, he took over the interior of Venice, and so that he could serve lunch and dinner inside, as well as manage the bar for I'm not sure exactly how the arrangement worked, because Mike Beater has the liquor license, but somebody else owns the building and so forth. But Jeff Crow has taken over all that. Plus, he just recently purchased what used to be the Lucky Penny Creamery off of Temple Avenue, off of Lake Street, off of Abby Turner, who's still doing business, but just with a different business model. So Jeff Crow is going to use the Lucky Penny Creamery as his catering center. And of course, the Venice Cafe will be where your dining experience will be. And then we have our second Dunkin' here in town. And you can see the person on the left there in the picture is Ken Bloom. He's the owner. He has 31 locations. Although I just heard today that he sold a couple of them. Somebody came in and wanted to buy some Dunkin's in the area, and he sold a couple of his. Somebody bought like 38 of them, and a couple of them were his. But this is still his restaurant here. They're very pleased with their early sales, and one of the reasons he built that was to take some of the pressure off of the East Main Street restaurant. And I'm sure you're all glad to hear that, because we've all seen cars out in the street at times.
You on that one too, East Main?
Yeah, yes. Although that may be one of the ones he's selling. So. Of course, we have Hippie Fox Rocks that opened up where Cheesemonger used to be. You can see their motto, if you will, or their business model right underneath their logo there. It's very much a kind of business. The owner is Jared Bell, is the name of the owner. And as far as I know, he's doing well so far. And then, of course, we were talking about this earlier today, or the Over Easy relocation. It's been a big success. I was talking to Ray yesterday. They're very happy with their sales. People love the parking situation down there. And they hope to have the liquor license soon. They're working between Stu Horowitz and her attorney to get the liquor license, and then they'll be open for dinner as well. So if you haven't been in there yet, even if not for the food, just go in there for the atmosphere. It's just so much livelier than it used to be, and it just feels like 20 years ago when the Puffer Valley first opened. Actually, that was, 30 years ago, maybe.
I told you.
A few other notable developments in the area, the reopening of the Kent Stage, which, they're obviously an economic engine for us. Spent almost $600,000 in improvements there. Of course, you got the $443,000 state capital grant, and then plus some of his own money, probably because of the Shuttered Venues grant, but almost $600,000 worth of investment. He's still going to do some exterior cosmetic work as soon as spring hits, and then interior decorating, and then he'll be done. So if you get emails from his business, he's been booking a lot of acts, and he says they've been selling out, some of them. And in fact, the one that just came up, who was it? He's a member of a band of our era. I can't remember, but it sold out in one day. That will come to me. Then another thing, it's not really an economic development thing, but I happen to be on the Kent Social Services Board of Advisors, and this was what used to be the old L&K restaurant, and if you weren't in there as it was winding down under its current format as a food pantry and as a hot lunch place, it was really run down. It was very, very run down, and I think our health department was being generous with them in terms of allowing them to operate. And so we went through a capital, I shouldn't say we, I should give credit to Michelle Hartman, Christy Anderson, Mike Bruder, Metis Construction, Marquise Seward, and then a big donation from Clavin in the memory of Sister Jordan and Debbie Massimi. But it was all done primarily through private donations. There were a few grants involved, but mostly just private donations. And you can see what the exterior and interior look like there. They're still waiting on one final. They're just the occupancy permit. They'll be in there in a couple weeks serving hot lunch. They're already doing the pantry out of there already. So they'll have a grand opening at some point in the future. And then we had the door expansion this last summer, and the door continues to be very popular. I keep having people ask me, is it going to come back next year? And I keep saying, it never went away, it never went away. It's always going to be there until council says it's not. So I wouldn't take it away from people if I were you folks. So I never heard anybody want to do it anyway. So I tried to think back to closures this past year, and these are the only three I could come up with as far as retail type of operations, and that was Empire because their lease expired, and essentially the landlord kicked them out because he wanted the space for office space. And then Circle K, I went in and talked to the district manager there, and she did say it was all about the pandemic and having the students not be on campus, and their lease was expiring. So that's why they closed. And then Uncle Mattio's, it's hard to say. They didn't seem to try very hard, to be honest. And a lot of people didn't even know that they were there. So I couldn't think of any other closures in 2021 that took place. Now we had, some back in 2020, but it just tells you how resilient these people are here. And as I talked to a lot of the owners and managers, they attribute a lot of that to so many people in Kent being committed to buying locally and shopping in the local restaurants and shops and whenever they can. So credit to the citizens of Kent. So what's coming soon? We have the Pit Stop Pub coming up in University Plaza. Neil Dukes' picture there. You can see that most of the renovation's done. He's just waiting also for a final permit, as well as his liquor license, which he's purchased. He got the Cheesemonger liquor license, and he should be open within a couple weeks. He wants to be open by Valentine's Day, which is coming up, obviously, very soon. And then Garage 108, many of you, I think you've all met Valerie Landis. She was in here for a couple reasons over the last few months, and she owns the actual Garage 108 building, which used to be the auto parts store or the Barbell Club. And then, if you didn't know, she now also owns the Karate building. And then she has a lease with the Canadian Club for their second floor. So I'm going to lay out all her plans for you. She still needs to work through a lot of things with the building department and zoning to make all these happen, but her intention is to, on the first floor of Garage 108, have a coffee roaster and shop, a community center, small retail shops, and a recording studio that can be rented. On the second floor of Garage 108, a co-working space and a ghost commercial kitchen. And then if you look across all three the second floor, all three spaces up there will be one large event center for weddings and so forth. And then the first floor of what is currently the karate studio, which is actually going to close this week. Unfortunately, because of the pandemic, they've had financial issues and are going to have to close. So that will become a fitness center, a meditation center, and a yoga center, or yoga studio. So a lot of plans for that kind of, strange-shaped building now that have the Canadian Club still right in the middle of it, but everything else will be wrapped around it, and that would be Valerie's. Up on North Water Street, we have their business model has changed a little bit. It was going to be Cloud 9. The whole business was going to be called Cloud 9. Now it's going to be Bar Lucci on the first floor, and that's going to open first. That'll feature craft beers and essentially be a bar. And then the second floor, which will open a couple months later, will be Cloud 9, and that'll feature arcade games and board games and things along those lines. And of course, I think everybody knows that's John and Peter Finley of Lucci Place Pizza. And then, of course, they'll have that very nice outdoor patio that was facilitated by the North Water Street improvements. I think Jim is here now, is he not? There he is. They're very appreciative of that, by the way. We have Eric Does Data. They're actually probably here in town now. They opened up an office on Martinell. I thought what was unique about them, it's 14 employees, but what was unique about them is the reason they moved from Akron to Kent is that this is where their employees wanted to be. He kept saying, this is where my employees want to be. They keep saying, move to Kent, move to Kent. And hopefully we'll have more stories like that down the road. But And many of his employees actually live in Wadsworth for whatever reason, so it's not going to be that short of a commute, but they want to be here. They want to work here and hopefully play here afterwards, so. We have Rocco's Cupcake Cafe. This is in the former One Love Yoga Space in College Town, Kent. It's owned by George Argy, and he's been operating out of either his home or somewhere else as a catering only up until now. And then, of course, this will be retail, plus he'll still continue to feature catering as well. Then we have the Heritage of Brimfield. Everybody keeps asking, what's going on out there on Route 43, and they get very disappointed when you tell them long-term care. Of course, it's obviously a necessary facility. It's going to have 90 rooms with 96 beds, 35 to 40 employees. They are using city water, and they are a participant of the JED. So, nice amenity to have. The closed Arby's, unfortunately, I don't have a complete story to tell you yet. It was for sale for $550,000. Within one day, he had 3 offers over that amount. It did sell to an investor, not to a user, and now the investor wants to lease it to someone. So that's the stage that it's at right now. He's got a new broker that's looking for a tenant as opposed to somebody buying it. So. And he paid more than $550,000 for it. Now, the closed Burger King, I can't say exactly what's going to happen there, but it should happen any day now, within a week or so. They've only wanted to negotiate with national chains. They do have the deal in place with the national chain, and it should happen, like I said, within a week. It's owned by a development company out of Youngstown. Then we have in the each and every building, their business model has changed a little bit. It was going to be all co-working space. Now it's changed where they're going to keep the Franklin School Dance there on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side is going to be Daisy Cake Pops. I've been buying these things forever at Farmers Market, not for me, but for my stepdaughter. It's currently operated by Amy Mucho, who's Nate's wife, as a home-based business in Kent with a presence at farmers markets and festivals, and now she's going to have a retail location as well as continuing to go to farmers markets and so forth. And then also we have Hazel May, which I had never heard of before, but I understand it's quite popular. It's an online business currently operated out of her home here in Kent. It's a lot of just home-based products, but primarily featuring tea towels, of all things. They're very, very popular. It's Susan Hazel Rich is her name, and her business model is pretty much going to stay the same. This is not going to be a retail location. This is just going to be where her office is now and where her distribution center is going to be. And then, of course, if you haven't heard, Main Street Kent moved their offices to that building as well. Each and every year will still be there, so that's basically a full building now. They won't have the co-working space that they originally had talked about. Then we have the closed Circle K that has been purchased by Mike Awad, and that's going to become what's called Campus Mart. If you don't know, Mike has extensive experience with convenience stores down in Virginia and Washington, D.C. area with his brother-in-law, I believe, brother-in-law. And then these two pictures are now out of date, so a medical marijuana dispensary, that's actually a picture of 1181 West Main there on the left. That's that gray building that Clavin owns out on West Main. This is what it would have looked like had they got a license for the medical marijuana dispensary. Unfortunately, they were way down in the lottery. The lottery was last Thursday, and there were 68 applications for 3 licenses in our region. And then the building on the right, of course, is the Dome, and that was going to be operated by a company out of Akron, and they unfortunately were way down on the lottery as well. The one that did come up fairly near the top is Lightly Toasted. Now, if they get a license, it will operate under a different name, and the existing business will no longer exist. They're number 6. So what will happen is the state will vet the application starting with number 1, obviously, and if something is either wrong with the location or the application, then then they'll go to number 2 and then number 3, and then they'll keep going down until they've awarded 3 licenses. So there is a possibility they could get to number 6. There is no possibility they'll get to the other 2. I was talking to Andy Rayburn, who would have been the one to open the one on Main Street, West Main Street, and he said he's confident there'll be another round of licensing next year, but, and that's not till almost 2 years. West End Apartments is still in the planning stages. They submitted building plans. They have delayed the start of construction just due to the cost of materials and labor, and they're just waiting and hoping that it'll stabilize and drop down a little bit. Oh, I did skip, I'm sorry, I skipped the convenience store, didn't I?
Yeah.
I forgot about it. It's not in my deck because it's so new.
If we're going to talk about marijuana, you got to talk
You were
about the
too anxious,
convenience
you were too
store.
anxious talking about the other.
The former Amco transmission place out in front of Mark's is now going to be a convenience store. It's going to be called 43 and 261. It's operated by a group of investors out of New York City, although there is some local representation, and they operate several convenience stores in the area, including the one in Garrettsville, where I live. And then I just mentioned the Kent West Apartments has been delayed. As far as the effects of the pandemic, I mean, you've all heard it, I'm sure, that the supply chain is a big issue, especially for manufacturers. The workforce shortage is a big problem for everybody, but it has a bigger effect on a hospitality business than any other because of the relatively lower wages that are paid in that business. So bars, restaurants, hotels, retail. And then, of course, you still have people that understandably are uneasy going out in public and uneasy going out in restaurants and stores. And only time will tell. It seems like we're heading in a very positive direction right now, but Joan will probably come up here and tell us some horrible thing later on. Oh, she's gone too, so we don't have to worry about that tonight. But just I do have a couple graphs. So the next one shows the effect of the pandemic on e-commerce. And if you go back before the pandemic, if you look at 2019 and the first quarter of 2020, e-commerce was already growing at about a 15% rate year over year. And then the pandemic hit and it shot all the way up to 40% and 35% during the worst of the pandemic. And then now that we're coming out of it, it's still growing, but it's growing over those much bigger numbers. So that compound effect is it's up 50-60% over where it was before. And that's what's making it so difficult to fill these brick and mortar retail locations that we have in downtown. And I'm sure Glenn can attest to the pain of that. So, as far as income tax, this is looking at it over the last actually 11 years at this point. We actually had a good year in 2021. If you look at it, it's actually our highest year ever. Now, these were restated for the way that Rhonda does it now, but year-over-year comparisons are valid. Oh, she's gone too. Everybody's gone. But year-over-year comparisons are valid. But the big risk as we go into 2022 is, the law has now changed and employers have to withhold income taxes from employees from where they work, not where they are headquartered. So starting, this month, or actually last month, if somebody from Davy Tree is working out of their home in Stowe, then Stowe is going to get their income tax.
They passed that, though, huh?
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's why we want our people back in our offices so they eat lunch downtown, and we also want them back in our offices so we can get their income tax. If you look at Penn State income tax, as you can see, it was rising steadily throughout the first part of the century, I guess I should say, millennium, and then leveled off right around 5.2 million, and then had about a $400,000 drop last year, primarily due to the adjustments that they made due to their reduced enrollment. I would expect that it'll start to creep back up again, but it's going to be lower, for quite a while. That'll be their current run rate. And then if you go to the next one, you can see that as a result of that, our reliance on Kent State University as a share of our total income tax has dropped quite a bit, especially if you look at just last year. At its peak, going back to 2011, it was almost 40% of our tax revenue. and last year it was down to just over 32%. It doesn't say they're not important. They're still by far our largest income tax contributor, but it's nice to have a little bit more diversity in where we're getting our income tax from as well. And then as far as unemployment, if you look at it by month, we were pretty high at the beginning of the year, although not really. We're just over 4% here in the city. The state was above 6%. And then if you look in November, that's the last month we had the city, it was at 2.9%, and that is less than full employment. I mean, that is more than full employment, I should say. That's probably, I don't have records going back, but I'm guessing 2.9 is the lowest it's ever been. I can't imagine it being any lower than that. And then if you looked at it by year on the next one, of course you can see the big numbers we had back in the Great Recession, and then you can see the big numbers we had in 2020 with the pandemic. But if you look at the city of Kent, we're actually virtually exactly the same as we were the last year before the pandemic. We were at 4.2% year-to-date in 2021. That's with not including December. And then we're at 4.1% in 2019. Now, that's not the whole story, though. And this is one graph I've never included before. This shows the workforce in Portage County. I don't have that at the city level. But it shows you the number, by workforce is defined as the number of people that either have a job or are looking for a job. And you can see that for the most part it was trending right around 87,500 for most of the last 10 years. And then if you look at the last 2 years, it's dropped by over 2,000 people. And that's that great resignation that you read about in the newspaper. But these aren't people that are quitting for a better job. They're still in the workforce. They're not counted in this. These are people that are quitting and not coming back to work. And it's a combination of people maybe my age that do early retirement. It's people that can't afford child care. And it's people that are worried about being out in the work environment because of the pandemic. And it's believed that some of those people are going to come back, but certainly not all of them. So a combination of 2.9% unemployment and 2,000 people missing from the workforce is making it very, very difficult for our employers out there.
Could that be part of not having all the students back on campus, though, too?
Well, this is all Portage County.
Okay,
and
it's countywide, okay.
Yeah, and it's also for the full year, so it's not just a point in time. It's year to date for 2021. So as far as conclusions, I think they were all pretty clear as we went through this, but COVID is still a dominant theme. There's issues with the workforce, in particular in the supply chain. Small businesses are getting hurt the hardest. It is a positive for low-income workers. We no longer have to talk about having a minimum wage of $15. If you want to hire somebody, you better pay them $15 an hour, or you're not going to have anybody working for you. And it's been kind of a selective impact on manufacturing. Some have been actually more than, I would say more than not, have been actually very successful through the pandemic, and then just a few have been hurt pretty hard. And there's still a lot of uncertainty. There's no really predicting the future at this point. Just a couple other things real quick that came up recently. KSU has announced that they have a lease on the old Starbucks building, but the operator and the type of business has not been announced yet. I'm sure that announcement will be coming out soon. The HW Industry buildings on North Manaway Street, the one just north of Sheets, that's been sold and been bought by Ben Coburna and Scott Patterson. They're not moving Easy Buy into there, so Ben's been buying a lot of, Ben and his partners have been buying a lot of rental properties. They're going to move their property management company into there, as well as Peter Pano's going to move in there. And then there's going to be 10,000 square feet of warehouse space available for lease, and I already lined them up with 4 people that have been looking for warehouse space, so I don't think that's going to be an issue. And then Lanchitanos is going to be sold on Friday. The deal's going to close on Friday, and it's been purchased by Craven, and they're actually going to take the building down and just clean the property up and have it there for future use.
Oh, there goes our restaurant.
Gonna be great.
Yeah, it'll be great, yeah. Hey, Tom,
Yes.
the building being redeveloped north of the Honest, on Gogler,
Yes. That's Tim and Michelle Sarr,
right?
and they're doing the lower level first, which is what they're working on, well, and the exterior. But the lower level is what's being built out now, and it's going to be Michelle's distribution center for online commerce. And then the upper floor, the last I heard, they were strongly considering making that a residence for themselves.
Oh, okay.
But the plans could change on that.
Okay. Any other questions from council? Anybody from the audience?
Are there any plans for the Davy Drill?
For-
Davy Drill? The space at Davy?
It has been foreclosed on, and there are now 3 customers, but I'm not aware of the identity of those customers. But they're confident it will be sold in the very near future.
Can I get a copy of the presentation from somebody?
Yes, I'll give you mine.
Okay. Tom, thank you very much. Been very
Thanks for
thorough.
your time.
Thanks, Tom.
Nice job,
Next item coming up is, where we at? Haymaker Farm Market sublease.
Right, and I'm going to take that, Mr. Chairman, because Bridget had a family emergency, so I offered to step up, and this first one's easy. So this is, you get this pretty much every year. You know, we have the master lease with the railroad, then we sublet the property for $1 to the Haymaker Farmers Market right there along Franklin. So nothing has changed other than the year, so we're asking to, your authorization to renew that sublease.
Okay, any questions from the council on that? Audience, back to council.
Move to approve
With emergency.
with emergency.
Second.
All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? No discussion, sorry. That passes. The next item is the ODOD demolition grant.
Yes, so this is another Bridget item. And I think you know from various times in the past where she's come before you to present opportunities for blighted property to be picked up by the Portage Land Bank. Sometimes it's, you know, rebuilt, purchased, rebuilt. Sometimes it's demolished, the property. It kind of depends case by case. In this particular case, they've identified 2 properties that they would like to at least take this opportunity to get some grant funding that's available for demolition of blighted properties. That's not to say that they're ready to go on that, but they would like, it's a tight timeline for the grant. So she's like, we really need to at least get in there, get council's authorization, apply for the grant. And, you know, sometimes I will say, the intention is to move forward with a, you know, like a demolition, but there's been, she offered at least one case where once the funding was secured and authorized, the owner decided to, someone stepped in and fixed the property all up, which had been what they were trying to achieve for years anyway. So even if nothing else, sometimes maybe this will be a motivator if we're successful. So again, this is just to apply for the funding. There's no guarantee. It's a partnership with the land bank. I think that's probably the extent of my knowledge on it, but happy to try to answer questions. And she has her memo in the pink sheets as well. If you
Roger?
Yeah, Dave, didn't we do this a few years ago, though? It was the same concept, wasn't it?
Yes, correct. We've done it a couple times.
What she's asking is to approve the intent to apply. She's not asking us to approve the demolition of the
Correct.
property.
Correct.
Anybody else from council? Back to the audience? Back to council.
Move to authorize with the emergency clause.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes.
Thank you.
That concludes community development.
Nothing under health and public safety, streets and sidewalks, Mr. Sidoti.
We have the East Main Street Improvement Project update. Mr. Bowling, your favorite topic. Oh, come on.
It'll be a topic for a little while.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I just want to start off with a little bit of good news. We heard last Thursday that we did receive an additional $700,000 from AMETS for this project. That brings us to $15.3 million to date for the job, and we're still working on trying to get more to complete the job. So, just wanted to give you an update on the public meetings we had in September. Thank you to all who talked to your neighbors and went out and tried to get people out there. The meetings were well attended with about 50 attendees coming to those meetings, to both of them. It was a very interested audience with good dialogue, or lots of questions, if we want to say it that way. And I understand there was good spirited dialogue on Facebook too. Considering I don't go on Facebook, I didn't know too much about it except for the ones that people gave me printouts of. So, but it was good to see that they were informed dialogue from both sides. So, in short, there are 14 comments submitted. The majority of comments were positive. Several of the comments we're going to incorporate into the project moving forward. Things like traffic calming gateway on North Willow, looking at native Ohio trees, and tracking how the project performs after it's done, so which we do on larger jobs right now. There were a couple of antagonistic comments, as would be expected of a job of this size and this much change. They involve things like crosswalks, not liking the crosswalks on 59, and one of the property owners wanted a traffic signal for their property. So, that being said, our next steps moving forward are to start the detailed design phase. Now that we've got to the point where we feel we've gone through the planning, we feel like we have an understanding of what the community wants and what will solve our problems. We'll go doing things like drainage evaluations, what elevation the road's going to be at, stuff that us engineers talk about all the time and we won't bore anybody with right now. So after that, we'll be going to right-of-way acquisition in hopes for construction in 2025. So.
Jim, so assure me that this project, that the sidewalks will be at the end of the snowplow blades?
I wish, after this last snowstorm, I wish this project was done, so they would actually have room to store the snow between the sidewalk and the roadway on East Main. So, absolutely.
Okay. Other questions for Jim? Seeing none, going to the audience. Anyone would like to ask anything? I don't see that we need anything other than thank you for all your hard work.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you, everyone.
This is complex.
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Okay, the second item we have is the KSU Juneteenth event, Willow Street closure request, and I see Dana in the audience. Is she going to present?
Well, I mean, I can lead it off. It pretty much is self-explanatory as far as this is the new Juneteenth celebration that Kent State is looking to relocate down on the Esplanade and have a day full of festivities. And in light of that, there's this issue of Willow Street and crossing Willow Street safely. And so the request was basically to temporarily, so basically for the day of the event, close it early in the morning. They set up. Do you think the event is relatively, I mean, well, it's in here. It goes relatively late, right? Till 10 o'clock or something, and then you would need another hour before. So it's for that day only, in support of the event, and anything else you want to throw in there.
That was perfect.
Our staff is fine with it. As far as, the recommendation from the staff would be to support it.
You have any other comments, Dana, since Dave took all
What he said.
Okay. Any questions from City Council for either Dana or Steve? No questions? Any questions from the community? Back to City Council.
Approved with emergency?
Second.
Any comments, John?
No.
Frank?
Yeah, sounds good.
Anyone else? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. All right, Mr. Mayor, streets and sidewalks are done.
Well, with that, I think we're done.
Oh, because we did the
It
budget.
really isn't on the agenda, but Melanie, you handed out a very good chain of events. You want to give us a 5-minute overview on it or not? This isn't part of the agenda.
Bonus material.
Bonus, yeah.
Fill in. I'll get us all our hour of comp time, so.
Dave, do you need these back?
No, what I wanted to do tonight was just make sure that council and everybody's informed with the impending storm coming. We as a department have been watching it for about 2 weeks now coming in. So I just wanted to put together a quick list so that everybody knew. We already have a 6-man crew coming in at 11 p.m. tonight, earlier if needed. Bridges and intersections will be monitored and catch basins will be checked until the snow hits. The snow anticipated is between 11 and 1 this morning. That's when they say the magic hour of the weather turning the rain into ice and then into snow. The snow plowing, once it begins, will occur around the clock until the streets are cleared and cleaned to provide access. I want to kind of just let council know what this means. It doesn't mean we may be down to wet pavement at that point, but our priority is to make sure that the streets are open for access and specifically for emergency services. I provided council with a snowplow map. Since our last couple storms, we had some suggestions of putting this up on our website, and I believe that we've done that now, so that people can see what our first priority, second priority, and then third priority is.
This is, I'm sorry, this is on the website?
I believe that it is on there now.
It should be. I didn't see Patty, but we were working on getting it uploaded,
It's
yes.
a great idea.
Melanie, can I get an extra one? I'll drop it off for Robin.
Absolutely. We'll begin clearing and cleaning the downtown once the snow is stopped and streets are accessible. We clear the snow from crosswalks and corners to provide for clear visibility. And we do take the snow. It's kind of funny. We pick it up, put it in a dump truck, and then take it to our parks so that it has an opportunity to melt. To be perfectly honest, we've never really actually caught up since January 17th. We still had many intersections, even down like South Water and on West Main. So we're hoping that this doesn't hit us as hard, but we're going to try and make sure that we can get caught up with that as well. Sidewalks, I know, was a big issue, so we've been making sure that we're trying to stay focused on that. The vent track is currently down. However, I did get a report at 5:30 tonight that the parts were picked up. It'll be put into service tomorrow morning. We're hoping by 8:30. So we're hoping that they'll be able to start on those sidewalks relatively early when we only have about 4 to 6 inches. They're calling for 2 to 4 by 8 tomorrow morning, so we're hoping then we can get ahead of it. And they'll continue to be out during that. One of the hardest things that they have that they fight with that is when you're at your aprons, when contractors or people push that snow up against the sidewalk. A vent track at its most opportune time really can only push about 6 inches of snow. So the last couple snows that we've had have really pushed their limits on it.
Yeah, am I understand, because this is what I was going to suggest when I called you there, but am I understanding that the sidewalk machine is going to be out before the end of the snowfall, and maybe have to make a couple runs, but that way it's pushing lighter amounts of snow?
That's correct. The only reason that it wasn't out the last time was that it was a holiday for us, and parks don't pay overtime for that. They just don't have that capability, I believe, in their budget to do that. So that was the only reason that they weren't out on Martin Luther King.
3 times as much snow, too.
That's true. When you get 18 inches, I think it's going to be hard to push any of it.
Salted, wet, icy, hard to
Yes.
push snow.
We did go ahead and institute a parking ban that began tonight at 7 p.m. We did try and follow suit with several of our local communities, so Talmadge, Ravenna, Akron all had those parking bans in place by 5 p.m. this evening. Our parking ban will continue to run until we lift it. One thing that people forget is that, you know, we're kind of facing for tomorrow. This is going to take us through the first morning hours of Friday, but it's really Friday that is really hard on us because we're just then starting to do our cleanup. So we do try to let that parking ban stay in place so that we can get down those streets and get them cleared as quickly as we can. Our anticipation is that we would lift this ban by 5 o'clock on Friday. I just listed the current temperatures at 4:30 and then kind of gave you a rundown of what was anticipated. Probably one of the biggest things I wanted to note for council as well, trash this week, if you weren't one of those that got the lucky robocall, was moved up by a day. They were going back and picking up in case people may have missed it, but they did let us know today that they will not be picking up trash tomorrow, so that'll be postponed to Friday, and then Friday will be postponed till Saturday. Recycling did the same kind of an abridged version. They were going around today to pick up routes early. They also are canceling for tomorrow, and they'll resume their regular routes on Friday and then probably pick up on Saturday as well. Of course, all of that's going to be weather dependent for them as well. One of the things that I would like to just remind council and your residents, if they call you, just remind them that this ice is going to be underneath that snow. And that creates kind of a dangerous situation when people want to go out and shovel their driveways or their sidewalks because they're forgetting that they're thinking it's just snow on top. But the reality of it is there could be, a nice little slick piece of ice underneath there. So just remind them if they're going to go out to be careful when they're doing that.
Does the city, or it looks like it doesn't do, I guess it'd be the driveway between the high school and the middle school?
That's private.
Yeah.
The schools?
Roosevelt Drive, that's private.
The school does it.
Yeah, the school should be doing that, yeah.
Allegedly.
So if there aren't any questions, I would just give you guys a blessed evening. Be safe out there when you're out traveling around. Give our plow drivers lots of room, and any plow driver that you do see, if you cannot see their side mirrors when you're behind them, they cannot see you. It is common for plow trucks to pull up and then need to go in reverse in order to be able to get the snow picked up. So just make sure you're giving them their room as they're out and about. Also help to remind our children, while that looks really cool when the snow plow is coming down and throwing snow, it is also very dangerous. If you haven't seen the video, check out the video of the Ohio Turnpike. Not a good thing. So we try to be as careful as we can, but after these long hours and long days with these storms that we've had to battle with, everybody gets tired. So we just thank you for your continued support and allowing us to do our job.
Yeah.
This is
Thanks,
fantastic.
Melanie. This
Thank
wasn't
you.
part of the agenda for tonight, but I think it was well deserved.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is great.
Thank you.
Can I just mention, too, that
Yeah.
Bill, for the fire department, gave me a call late this afternoon when she mentioned about safety issues. In light of the challenges of making sure that people stay safe, he's going to bring in extra, just like she's going to have extra, he's going to have extra firefighter personnel in working on shift, so that if things get rough out there, accident calls and injuries or COVID, we're still getting, he said this morning, we're still getting just as many COVID calls. Those really haven't stopped all that much. He's still got to go out there and get them. So he doesn't want to be in a situation where he does a request to bring people in and they all say, I can't get in. So just so that you know, we are sort of ramping up for a little bit of that expectation too. I appreciate Bill kind of thinking ahead on that. Thank you, Mayor.
We're done?
We were adjourned. That was, I just asked Melanie.
Move to adjourn.
More than a half hour. At 7? What do you, think about, let me know tomorrow.
I don't remember last time we had